Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise, going through stacks of specialized material to give you the essential insights.
Whether you're looking for that strategic edge in your career or, you're deep in the books for a big exam.
Like the NMLS SAFE Exam. We're here to give you that unfair advantage.
And today we are diving into a really specific corner of mortgage finance. It's one that causes a lot of confusion.
And carries a ton of risk. We're talking about construction and renovation lending, C&R loans.
That's right.
So if you're a learner listening right now, the goal of this deep dive isn't to just, memorize a bunch of product names.
Right.
It's to really get the core concept that examiners are looking for, which is the risk structure. Why are these loans so fundamentally different from your standard purchase mortgage?
It's a fascinating topic because it's this blend of traditional finance. Can you pay back the loan and pure project management risk?
The ability to actually get the thing built.
Exactly. And understanding that combination it's the key.
And hey, before we really jump in, if you're enjoying these NMLS Safe Study deep dives, please do subscribe, like, and comment.
Yeah, let us know what topic you want us to tackle next.
Or even just tell us what state you're tuning in from. It really helps the channel grow and lets us reach more learners like you.
Okay, let's get into it.
So at the most basic level, what is it? What makes a C&R loan totally different from everything else we cover?
It's the collateral, plain and simple.
The house.
The house. In almost every other situation, a refi, a standard purchase, the collateral is. Well, it's there. It's finished. You can see it. You can appraise it.
A known quantity.
A known quantity. But with C&R loans, whether it's a new build from scratch or a big rehab project, the collateral is basically an idea. It's all tied up in future potential.
So the very thing that secures the loan for the lender, it doesn't really exist yet.
Exactly. The loan security depends entirely on future work getting done. And not just done, but done right, on time and on budget.
Yeah.
That right there is the central risk.
Which means the lender isn't basing their decision on today's value, but on some guess about tomorrow's value.
A very educated guess, but yes. And that brings us to the absolute cornerstone concept for anyone studying this, the as completed value.
Okay.
This is the estimated market value of the property after all the work is done. That's the number the lender uses for everything, the loan amount, the LTV ratio.
But hold on, using a projected value seems incredibly risky, right? Construction costs change constantly. How can an appraiser even value a pile of dirt or a house that's been gutted to the studs?
That is a fantastic point. The appraiser has to rely heavily on the plans, the specs, the builder's contract.
All the paperwork.
All of it. They have to project what the final product will be worth. And the SAFE exam really tests you on this, on understanding that because it's a projection, the LTV calculation is just inherently uncertain.
Which makes the lender way, way more conservative.
Far more conservative than with a standard purchase.
And just to be clear for everyone, we talk about two types: construction loans for new builds and renovation loans for existing properties.
Right.
But for exam purposes, they're really grouped together because they both share that same fundamental risk.
Precisely. They both rely on what will be, not what is. The lender's main worry is the same. Will the finished house actually be worth the as-completed value we use for the underwriting?
Because if the project fails halfway through,
the collateral could be worth way less than the money they've already paid out.
So given all this uncertainty, the lender can't just hand over a big check for the full loan amount up front.
Absolutely not. That would be insane.
Which leads us right into how they control that risk.
Correct. The elevated risk means they have to implement really strict controls. And the most important one you need to know is the draw schedule.
Okay, walk us through that. What is a draw in practice? Why is it so important?
A draw is just a portion of the loan funds. The money is released in stages, not all at once.
And those stages are tied to progress.
They are strictly tied to verifiable construction milestones. So, for example, a foundation is poured and passes inspection. That triggers draw 1.
The framing is up and inspected. Draw 2.
Exactly. The lender needs proof before any more money goes out the door.
What kind of proof are we talking about?
It's all about documentation. The contractor submits a draw request with invoices, proof that labor was paid, and lien waivers so subcontractors can't come back later. And then, and this is critical, the lender sends their own inspector to the site.
To physically verify that the work for that stage is 100% complete.
100%. It's a system designed specifically to prevent fraud and misuse of funds.
Which seems like a big ethical point.
It's huge. The funds released in a draw must be used for that specific stage. You can't take draw 2 money meant for framing and, go buy a new truck.
That's misrepresentation. It's fraud.
Yes, and it's a recurring theme in ethics questions on the exam.
So beyond the draw schedule, I assume the lender is also vetting the actual builders.
Oh, absolutely. That's key control number 2, contractor oversight. Lenders will only work with licensed, insured, and pre-approved contractors.
They want to see a track record.
A track record of finishing projects successfully and, importantly, without any liens from unpaid suppliers or subcontractors.
Okay, this brings up a classic exam scenario. The borrower who wants to be their own general contractor, the self-GC.
Uh-oh. Yeah, underwriting looks at that with a microscope.
It seems like a huge red flag.
It is, unless that borrower has real demonstrable experience in construction management. For most people, it leads to delays, huge cost overruns. It's just a recipe for disaster.
So if you see an exam question with a self-GC who has, say, very little cash reserves,
The answer is always going to lean toward high risk and, frankly, unsuitability. Same goes for vague or incomplete renovation plans. If the lender can't see a detailed cost breakdown, they can't accurately project that as completed value.
let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about the money. How does the interest work while the house is still being built?
This is a pretty important detail. So during the construction phase, the borrower is usually making interest-only payments.
Okay.
But, and here's the key, the interest is only calculated on the funds that have been disbursed so far.
So only on the money that's been paid out through the draws, not the full loan amount.
Exactly. It keeps the payments lower and more manageable for the borrower while they're often still paying rent or another mortgage somewhere else.
That makes sense. But eventually, that short-term construction loan has to become a permanent long-term mortgage. And that conversion, that seems to introduce a whole new set of risks for the borrower.
Critical risks. And how that conversion happens really dictates who takes on that risk. There are basically 2 ways it's done.
With the first one.
The first, and usually the best for the borrower, is the construction to permanent loan. It's often called a one-time close.
One closing.
Right. You sign all the documents once up front. The loan starts as interest only during the build, and then it just automatically converts to your permanent fixed-rate mortgage when the house is done.
And the big advantage there is what?
You're locking in your permanent interest rate before the first shovel even hits the ground. It completely eliminates interest rate risk for you, the borrower, and you only pay one set of closing costs.
Okay, so what's the alternative? The one that's much riskier.
That would be the 2 closing structure. Here, you get a short-term loan just for the construction phase.
And then what happens?
Then, months later, when the house is finished, you have to go out and apply for a brand new, separate permanent mortgage. You have to qualify all over again.
And that seems like the major danger. The world could have changed in the 9 or 12 months it took to build.
It's a huge hazard. Imagine you qualified with a DTI of, say, 38%. But during construction, you finance a new car or your spouse's income changes.
Suddenly you go to apply for that permanent mortgage.
And your DTI is now 45%. You don't qualify anymore under the ability to repay rules. Now you're stuck. You have a finished house and no permanent financing.
Wow. And you're also exposed to whatever interest rates are at that future date.
Completely exposed. That 2 closing structure is loaded with future qualification risk and interest rate risk for the borrower.
It really highlights why the underwriting is so much stricter for these loans to begin with. Financial resilience seems to be the most important thing.
Borrower suitability is paramount. I mean, construction projects are just, by their nature, uncertain. There are always delays, unexpected problems.
Runs.
Always. So these loans are just not suitable for borrowers who don't have that financial cushion.
What are the biggest red flags from a suitability standpoint that learners should watch for?
The exam sources always point to borrowers with minimal cash reserves or maybe unstable income, like someone who is purely commission-based.
Or someone who's counting on a future raise to make the payments work.
Exactly. Underwriters need to see a significant financial buffer, enough cash to cover not just unexpected costs, but also the monthly payments if the project runs longer than planned.
We should also probably talk about the borrower optimism trap.
Yes. It's just human nature to think, my project will be different, it'll go perfectly.
But on the exam, optimism is a liability.
It's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
Your answer should always favor conservative planning and risk mitigation. Never, ever assume a project will finish early or under budget.
Okay, so with all this complexity, the draws, the inspections, the projections, I just want to confirm these are still mortgages, right? All the normal rules still apply.
100%. The complexity does not give you a pass on regulatory obligations. TILA, RESPA, ability to repay, fair lending, they all apply.
So the lender has to make sure the borrower can repay the full permanent loan, even during that interest-only construction phase.
That's the law.
And at the end of the day, it all comes back to that completion risk. If the house doesn't get finished, the collateral is compromised.
That's what drives the whole system. Those inspections before each draw are the mechanism to force the project forward and make sure the collateral is being built properly toward that target as completed value.
Because if a borrower defaults and the house is only 70% done,
The bank can only sell 70% of a house, and their financial recovery is, dramatically reduced.
that was a fantastic deep dive. I think the key takeaway for everyone studying is just uncertainty drives the risk.
It does.
And all of these processes, the draws, the approved contractors, the strict underwriting, they're all just controls to manage that uncertainty.
Right. When you're looking at an exam question, always, always lean toward the answer that favors sustainability and conservative planning.
If we were to connect this to the bigger picture, to what's happening today, what's a final thought you'd leave us with?
Well, think about this. How does something like global supply chain volatility or the inflation we've seen in materials like lumber, how does that change the underwriting for these loans?
It must make it even harder.
It forces underwriters to require even larger contingency reserves from the borrower. It just further emphasizes that need for really deep financial flexibility. The margin for error is getting smaller.
That is a fascinating thought to end on. We really hope this deep dive into construction and renovation lending has given you some clarity and context.
Yeah, we hope it was helpful.
And if you did find it helpful, please subscribe, like, and comment. Let us know which topic you want us to cover next, or tell us which state you're tuned in from. It really does support the channel and helps us reach more learners.
Thanks for joining us to explore the complexities of building the future.
We'll see you next time for the next deep dive.